Bayo Toby is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning, Juma. Good morning, Yusuf.
Welcome, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
Morning. Okay, let's begin the review today with the Nation newspaper. And we begin with above the masthead, we have 2022 budget to be funded with 4.9 trillion loan, says Minister. 2022 budget to be funded with 4.9 trillion loan, says Minister. You find details on page 11. NCDC, cholera killed 1,174 in 7 days. Cholera killed 1,174 in 7 days. With rider, 23 states FCT affected. Governor, Southeast must resist IPOP to save economy. Details on page 5. Police deploy helicopters to restore peace in Jos. You also find that on page 9. Below the masthead, HOSCOM, PANDEF, INC, PDP protest PIB Act. Buhari signs bill. With riders, OPEC orders, it will open up oil gas sector for investment. Bandits kill police inspector, abduct 19 students in Zamfara. Details on page 8. And the bold headlines we have on the Nation newspaper: bids open for Lagos, Kano, Abuja, Port Harcourt airports. Bids open for Lagos, Kano, Abuja, Port Harcourt airports. With riders, government unveils concession conditions. Aviation workers, it is unrealistic. And COVID-19 vaccination resumes with Moderna. And President Buhari will be out of isolation today. And the picture story you're seeing there, turmoil in Kabul. Some resident of Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, on the tarmac of the city's airport during a desperate bid to force their way into an American aircraft on ground to evacuate their citizens following Sunday's Taliban takeover of the capital. And 5 killed in Taliban shutdown of Kabul airport. You find all the details on page 39. At the bottom plate of the Nation newspaper, APC wins Lere federal constituency in Kaduna. Details on page 8. Court to hear suit against doctors September 15. Details on page 2. Nadabo.
Okay, here we have the leadership newspaper, and then on the front page, right under the masthead, we have the following stories. And it says, federal government to borrow 5.62 trillion naira for 2022 budget deficit. Federal government to borrow 5.62 trillion naira for 2022 budget deficit. But the main story is about the NMPC, and it says NMPC goes fully commercial as PMB signs PIB into law. NMPC goes fully commercial as PMB signs PIB into law. Details on page 4. And then the riders are upstream, downstream regulators to be created within 90 days. Experts set agenda as sector gets legal framework for investments. PDP, Joe Youth kick ACF Health president. Saudi Aramco to acquire 20% stake in Reliance Industry Limited. Now, and get details of all this in relation to the PIB signing into law, being signed into law, that is on page 4. On page 6, we have bandits kidnap 15 college students in Zamfara. On page 6 still, while we don't kill repentant terrorists, says the army. And on page 37 of the leadership newspaper, Taliban takes over Afghan presidential palace. Now, IBB is 80, and eulogy says IBB turns 80 today. That's going to be on page 7. And then finally, the picture story here, it's about the signing of the bill, PIB by the president. And then another picture down there, which is a little bit interesting, is about Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi. He says, I'm not interested in politics. You get details of that on page 6. Bayo, what do you have?
Let's start with the Petroleum Industry Act. President yesterday gave Nigeria a Petroleum Industry Act. He signed the Petroleum Industry Bill that has languished within the corridors of the executive and the legislative arm for over 2 decades into law. The president, who is still working from home because he's observing the international protocol on COVID-19 for travelers, assented and gave the nation a Petroleum Industry Act. The ceremonial part of the transmission of the bill into an act will be concluded at the Federal Executive Council tomorrow. The bill passed by the Senate on July 15 was also accorded concurrence by the House of Rep on July 16. The law has several bills into one, and it covers upstream, midstream, and downstream. It has identification, definition, and provision for host communities with a framework for investment, direction, and participation also for host communities. 75% of the 3% for host communities is to be dedicated for development, and this is expected to enhance development in host communities. It also provides a clear roadmap for investors who can holistically determine their investment in oil and gas, and it is described as a very positive impetus for investment in that industry. The second flag of the vaccination involving 4,080,000 Moderna vaccines donated by United States took place yesterday. Also rolled out was the 177,600 Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine under the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust. In his remark at the ceremony, Chairman Presidential Steering Committee commended health workers for their sacrifice towards tackling the pandemic. The Minister of Health also enjoined all Nigerians to turn out and get vaccinated, stressing that since vaccine came to Nigeria and it has been administered, no single Nigerian has died from the vaccination. The Chairman Senate Committee on Health, Senator Ibrahim Oloriogbe, appealed to the National Association of Resident Doctors to embrace opportunities towards addressing the grievances and return to the hospitals. He said the rollout of phase 2 could not be effectively achieved without them. He said, I want to call on our colleagues who are on strike to please avail themselves of all opportunities of negotiation that government has given. He assured that the National Assembly is working with the executive and other stakeholders to resolve the human resource challenges. It may interest you, Senator Oloriogbe is a doctor. The Minister of Health is a doctor. I think Minister of State too is. The Minister of Labor, who is negotiating, is a doctor. And the head of civil service of the Federation, who is also to interface in the transmission between IPs and account, is also a doctor. So
it's a doctor's affair now. I think they are all part of the same, family.
Yeah, professional calling. And I think they understand all the intricacies than all of us do. And I think if they put their heads together, they should be able to give us a solution.
Does that mean the doctors will still be on strike until September 15th when the hearing will continue in the court?
No. The issue of the court is a different thing altogether. But aside from the issue of the court, if even you have a court case and you are able to settle your case, you can go back to court and say you want to settle out of court. So that cannot be an albatross.
Okay, let's talk about the airport concession briefly.
Well, the airport concession has been ongoing. The details will be worked out by the Ministry of Aviation, but industry participants are expressing serious concerns. But government cannot carry all the load. The idea of concession is to make sure that after a project has been completed, it is given to an entity that will take care of it and make sure that it is properly maintained and also make returns. A corollary of that is the toll gate system that is returning. It is to make sure that the loans that I've taken for some of this infrastructure can be plowed back, and some of those that is paid at the toll will be used in maintaining and sustaining those infrastructure. So it is, the intention is to make sure that infrastructure provided are sustained, maintained properly, so that they will last longer. But the nitty-gritty of it is what those who are involved are concerned about.
They need to iron out all the gray areas before it can fully.
There was the story Yusuf read about abduction at College of Agriculture in Bakura. This is in Zamfara State. Yes. Unfortunately, bandits shot their way at 10 p.m. on Sunday there. They abducted 15 students, took a teacher, his wife, and 2 children. And it's becoming unbearable now. The same bandits within the border of Kaduna and Zamfara, you remember, shot down an Alpha jet. A pilot had to eject and narrowly got safe from it. They have apparently declared war. Bandits are usually criminals who rob travelers on the highway and get back to the bush. But these ones now are now waging war. And I think the presidency and the National Assembly must identify this fact that these criminals have declared war against Nigeria.
They are there for terrorists. There are no more bandits anymore, because only terrorists shoot down planes, only terrorists, you know, ransack towns and things like that. Bandits don't do that. They go on soft targets, but now they are going straight forward to heavy targets, and indeed becoming a worrisome issue.
Indeed, Boko Haram are surrendering. Eventually, they too will, if they understand the language of the president. Well, thank you so much, Bayo, for coming. We're running out of time.
Thank you, too.
As usual. Well, we'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin. Don't go away.